Hi, and welcome to Let's Talk Safety. I'm your host, Dylan Sutherland from Protekta Safety Gear. Throughout this series, we'll be interviewing industry experts to provide our audience with valuable insights on various categories of PPE. Topics will range from selection and standards to maintenance and care. This should ultimately assist you in selecting fit-for-purpose safety solutions for your site. From these discussions, we will create resources such as Toolbox Talk downloads and blogs, all of which will be available on our website, www.protekta.co.za for download. Hi, and welcome back to another episode of Let's Talk Safety. As you might know, we've changed the format slightly in the second season, and the point of that is to make sure that we create valuable feedback for the audience. We've heard what you've asked for, and now we'll be focusing a lot more on the standards that are actually revolving around the safety space. So today we have a guest coming back to us, Stephan van Heerden. He's obviously an in-house specialist from Protekta Safety Gear. His focus is predominantly on the work at heights. In the first part of this episode, we'll cover the standards quite quickly to make sure that we understand what it takes to create a EN standard product. And then the second part, we'll dive into the practical elements, which will cover more of the site-based situations. So I think without further ado, let's get into it, Steph. Can you explain to us, with regards to EN361, is there a local standard that it needs to align with? And then aligned to that is, what is that standard? What does it look like?
Yeah, 100%, Dylan. So locally, we adopt the EN standards. So the SANS equivalent would be SANS 50361. And then also just need to mention that it is a Category III PPE. So that means that it needs to carry CE certification.
Fantastic. And for a layman, what is EN361?
EN361 is the standard that covers full body harnesses, and it needs to meet certain test requirements to be able to withstand the forces in a fall, to be able to arrest a fall in an upright position, and the webbing also needs to meet certain requirements.
Fantastic. So if you can just quickly give us those requirements in the test, what kind of measurements would it need to meet when it's being tested to that EN361 standard?
Yeah. So there's a couple of requirements that a manufacturer needs to meet for their harness to be EN361 or SANS 50361. They need to do a couple of drop tests. So there's two drop tests. There's a static drop test and a dynamic drop test. The dynamic drop test would test that the harness keeps the forces below 600 kilograms or 6 kilonewtons. And that ensures that the person wearing the harness doesn't experience a force higher than that. And then they would also test in that dynamic drop test that the person falls in an upright position. So the fall should not be inverted. And then there's a static drop test or static load test rather. And there they would test to ensure that the harness can withstand 15 kilonewtons for 3 minutes. So that ensures that once the person's been exposed to a fall, that the harness would be able to keep the person suspended while they're awaiting rescue. And after they've done those tests, they also need to ensure that none of the components on the harness has been compromised. So the webbing, the stitching, the buckles, everything should still be intact after that test.
Which would make sure that it's then compliant and according to that EN standard, right?
Yes, absolutely. And then there's also tests for corrosion and fit.
Fantastic. Just on the drop test, on the dynamic part, is there a distance that the harness needs to be dropped and then caught? That
Yeah,
part of that
so it's a 4-meter drop. Disruptions to the webbing. There can't be any components that's been damaged. The harness should still be intact fully.
Fantastic. That's clear. So once we start looking past the standard, is there any other safety features that might go into a product which is certified to that EN361?
So there are a couple of extra components that manufacturers would add to their harness. By adding these components, the harness should still be able to meet the EN361 or SANS 50361 standard. But they would just add these components to make the harness a bit more comfortable for the user. So they would make it a bit more breathable, ergonomic, quick attachment points. There's also usually an A on the connection points. So on your front and dorsal D-ring, there'll be A's, and that's where you would connect your fall arrest device to. And then,
How do we know what limitations we kind of get to from the weight point?
So different manufacturers would test their harness to different weights. So you get the most common is 100 kilograms, and some manufacturers also test their harness to 140 kilograms. So that is definitely something to keep in mind and consider when selecting your harness.
How do our audience know that it's rated at a higher rate?
So it would be written on the harness where the serial number is, where the date of manufacture is.
When it comes to that EN361 standard, what are the limitations that people should be aware of?
A user can only use that harness in a fall arrest or fall restraint situation. If they're doing suspension work or rope access, that's a different standard and a different type of harness that would need to be used in that scenario. So this harness can only be used in that case. Another restriction would be the weight limit. So different manufacturers have different weight limits. Some go up to 140 kilograms, whereas others only test their harnesses up to 100 kilograms.
Fantastic. So basically, I would say then, if you agree, that EN361 in a nutshell is making certain that a harness is able to withstand a fall, hold the person in an upright position once that fall has occurred, and not break, so that in event it's actually saved that person's life. There is a problem though that's the first step. That then creates a bigger problem because we can then, obviously in later episodes, we'll cover suspension trauma. Which can then kill somebody or lead to a fatality.
Yeah. So I always tell my clients, your harness saves your life and then it starts to kill you afterwards. So if we're planning for fall arrest, we need to plan for rescue. Definitely.
Cool. Steph, thanks so much for that quick brief over the EN361. Let's hope it's added some value and hopefully protected some lives.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Dylan. Appreciate it.
Thank you for joining us, and I hope this episode added value to you. If you are experiencing any safety challenges on your sites and require any additional information, please do leave us a message on LinkedIn via Protekta Safety Gear's page, or alternatively follow the link below and share a message with us, because maybe it can create value or a valuable conversation for future episodes. Be sure to also follow us on LinkedIn. There will be some valuable information shared from today's discussion.